Thank you, everyone. My name is Eben Rose. I'm a graduate student at the New School for Social Research. I didn't start out studying economics, is what I'm studying at the New School. I started out as a geologist, a field geologist, studying deep time. I worked in the Grand Canyon, looking at the half-billion-year-old lowest flat-lying layers of the Grand Canyon, and then went on for a doctoral dissertation work at Yale University, looking in even deeper time at the origins of life on Earth and 3.5 billion-year-old rocks in Australia and South Africa. So deep time is sort of my specialty, but timing is not my strong suit. And I came upon a sort of a family crisis right at the financial crisis, and that really derailed my aspirations for a geologic career. And I ended up settling in Maine and got involved in local politics, local and state politics. I became a city councilor in the city of South Portland and ran for state senate in 2020. Also timing not maybe my strong suit. It was right when COVID happened. So I was the underdog candidate, and I did this artsy campaign to try and get some messages out for people who were going out on bike paths but otherwise in lockdown. Sort of a hopeful vision of what we could aspire to after this, existential crisis, right? Or during this existential crisis. And this paper came out at that same time that really had an effect on me. Scientists Warning on Affluence, a Nature paper. And what this paper describes is that all the deleterious effects of the environment, whether it's coral bleaching or deforestation or CO2 in the atmosphere, are all measurable and quantifiable and sourceable. And that it turns out that it's the consumptive appetites of the very wealthy in the world that are driving most everything, not only in what they consume and the resources they take for yachts and extra homes and luxury items, but in shaping whole supply chains on what it is we could possibly even purchase at a store, in a market. And also setting as an image for the world what the good life is, which is unobtainable and unsustainable. So the key point of this paper, though, is that over the past 50 years, any technological advances, solar panels, windmills, any of those technologies have been completely outstripped by the increasing pace of this insatiable consumptive appetite. And we see this every day with news about global warming increasing, breaking records, CO2 emissions increasing. The only 2 times in the past 30 years that CO2 emissions have come anywhere close to the levels that are recommended by the Paris Accords have been during the Great Recession and even more closely during the COVID lockdown. And the thing about it is, I will say that there were a lot of people who were displaced during COVID, and I'm not pro-pandemic, don't get me wrong. But there is something to be gained when there are at least some people in the population who said, I really liked not having to be in the rat race. I really liked having time to embroider and learn how to sew or make sourdough, spend time with my family. That there's something about that experience that we have yet to sort through and filter out that could be of an advantage. Because the world that we're facing is more like what happened just prior to COVID, which is the big Australia wildfires that displaced whole towns. And they were displaced for 2 years in tent cities, for 2 whole years, trying to figure out what it means to be a human, what it means to be an Australian, and what it means to live in a world that has an economy hovering over us. So, 2 years is a long time to sort of figure out what it means to be engaged as an Australian citizen. And this is something that's going to be our future, sadly. As we see more and more displacement, more and more risk of displacement, that is commensurate with the 4-degree C path that we are on. So I hate to bring the weight down in the room with this, but it is a reality that we're facing. And there's a term that I came across very recently about the armed lifeboat, that this is sort of what will happen with a 4-degree C future. More displacement, hundreds of millions of people displaced in the world, more events like COVID, more shocks to our economic system, all the notions and pillars of stability that make the economy that we know, as we already had experienced with COVID, will be shaken. And so what will the end product be? Well, if we follow the path with the wealthy extracting more and more of the world's resources to make sure that their wealth stays intact and gets even richer, then it's going to be like an armed lifeboat. And one aspect of that in our modern time is this sort of tight money idea that money is a scarce resource, that it's not a public resource that can be used to deploy for making a better life for most all of us. And so here's the question. Is there talent in the world that can be deployed in the short and long term to design a way to provision a sustainable, dignified, regenerative good life for all 8.1 billion of us? To me, that is the only moral economic question to ask. And so my plan, my hope is to focus on a federal job guarantee, not a new idea, but one that I think can be specially designed, that offers choice and training that's completely voluntary, that focuses on sustainable production and consumption, that's well-designed, comfortable. It's a secure, low-impact lifestyle in exchange for 20 hours a week, something that the pandemic lesson maybe gave us. So every fall, I sail from Maine to New York and sail back in the summertime and live on board my sailboat at Liberty Landing Marina across from Battery Park. It happens to be just about a mile away from Ellis Island, where my ancestors, the Cormanics and Vojaks, arrived in Ellis Island to try and make a better life for themselves. So it's kind of come full circle, trying to make a better life maybe for all of us. Thank you.